Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever, wherever you're at. I'm so glad you're here today. Um, you can just keep praying for all these people who are in these dire circumstances. I mean, those poor people in Texas. We've got had big floods here in North Carolina, and just some interesting weather stuff going on. But just be praying for those people down there. And as they're grieving, many of them, they're still finding more and more bodies. Well, today we are moving on in the teachings of Jesus in the Gospel of John to a lesson entitled The Vine and the Branches. And it's from John 15, 1 through 12. In our last lesson on the 14th chapter, we learned that obedience is the proof of our love, and love is the reason for our obedience. Jesus spoke the words recorded in chapter 13 or 14 in the upper room, where he had eaten the Last Supper with his disciples. The 14th chapter ends with Jesus saying to them, "Come now, let us leave." So they began walking from the upper room to the Mount of Olives. As they walked, they passed various kinds of vegetation. Of course, there were olive trees there because, that's what the Mount of Olives was named for. But I'm sure there were also vineyards, and Jesus used what they were seeing to illustrate the principles he wanted to teach. So let's read our passage. Turn with me to John 15, 1 through 12. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Remain in me, and I in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, but must remain in the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he's thrown away like a branch, and it dries up, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they're burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. These things I've spoken to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. So who is the gardener, the vine, and the branches? Well, Jesus begins by identifying the gardener, the vine, and the branches. The gardener is God the Father. Why does a gardener have a vineyard? Well, the only purpose for a vineyard is the production of fruit. A vineyard that produces no fruit, it's worthless. Each vine that produces no fruit is worthless. And each branch in each vine that produces no fruit is worthless. God created this world, his vineyard, for a purpose. First of all, Christ is the fruit producing vine. He has many branches, but not all are fruitful. I don't believe that anyone is a true branch who does not commit to Jesus as Lord and live as his faithful disciple. Number two, what happens to the branch that bears no fruit? The gardener cuts it off. Why? Because it's of no use since it's not fulfilling its purpose. We were created and redeemed for a purpose. If we don't fulfill it, the Father has every right to cut us off. Number three, what about the faithful branches? The gardener just leaves them alone, right? No. He desires the most fruit possible, so he prunes the faithful branch to produce more. Is this because God is greedy? The one who created us knows that our greatest joy and his greatest glory is to produce bushels of fruit. 1 or 2 grapes aren't enough. It doesn't satisfy our heart's desire or God's plan and glory. What kind of pruning does a father do? Well, he cuts away dead and dying twigs that are in the way and hinder the production of fruit. And it hurts. We don't like to be pruned. We'd rather have him leave us alone in our half-dead condition. But he wants the best for him and for us. This is the purpose of his discipline. Hebrews 12:10, for they disciplined us for a short time, talking about our parents, as seemed best to them, but he disciplines us for our good, so that we may share his holiness. The branches are already clean. They've been cleansed by the washing of the word. John 13:10. Jesus said to him, he who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, otherwise he's completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. The word washes over us, brings to us, bringing a repentant heart, cleansing, healing, comfort, and often pruning. But the next point is remain in me. What's the primary responsibility of the branch? Well, producing fruit is actually secondary. No branch even has a chance to bear fruit unless it remains in the vine. Number 1 is remaining. In 6 verses, Jesus uses the word remain 11 times. So it's pretty obvious that he wants us to get the message. The branch is concerned only with location, abiding or staying attached to the vine. The vine's one concern is to bear fruit. The branch will bear fruit if it's constantly abiding in the vine. If we're being told to remain, it becomes obvious that, guess what? Apparently, it's possible for us to not remain or to leave. The Lord, who did not force us to be branches in the first place, will also not force us to remain as branches. That's not how the Lord works. The enemy is the one who forces people to do things, not the Lord. He gives us a choice. We have a tendency to think that once you are a branch saved, that, all's well. You think you'll always be a branch saved, whether you produce fruit or not. But you know what? That's not the picture Jesus paints here. It's a matter of choosing to remain in the vine and thus producing fruit. 1 John 2:6 says, the one who says he remains in him ought himself also to walk just as he walked. You know what? Nothing's automatic. The remaining requires our will, our love, our obedience, our being disciples. And bearing fruit requires our work, our perseverance, our prayer, and our faith. Of course, this doesn't mean that we can do it by ourselves. That's ludicrous. Imagine a branch separated from a vine and stuck in the ground trying to get sustenance and produce grapes. Well, this section is full of commands or imperatives. We must do our part, but it's also plainly spells out the fact that we can't do it alone. What are the imperatives or commands? Remain in me, remain in my love, love each other as I have loved you, love each other, etc. We are to do our part. What is his part? No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Apart from me, you can do nothing. This is such a clear picture of our relationship with the Lord. We have to make the effort to remain in Jesus, who is the source. There's no way that we can be fruit-bearing otherwise. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. These days, there's a lot of so-called fruit being produced that when carefully examined will be revealed as actually rotten or an imitation of the real thing. The true vine, who is Jesus, only produces good and wholesome fruit. Once again, Jesus says he is the vine. He's the source of all life. In fact, he is life. Without him, there is no life, whether physical, spiritual, eternal. Jesus clarifies the relationship when he says, "You are the branches." Branches must be attached to the vine to even be called branches. They're totally dependent and submitted to the vine. They have no life in themselves. They have only the life of the vine flowing through them. Now, Jesus goes back to his theme of remaining. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. This is a strong but conditional statement. There is the conditional if. This always indicates that there is also an if not. The relationship has to be one of remaining. We have to remain in him, and he has to remain in us. Revelation 2:10 says, "Do not fear that you are about what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you in prison, so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life." You know what, folks? We need to be praying for many, many Christians around the world right today as we speak, who are being tested, who are being persecuted and killed. We need to pray that they will remain faithful to the Lord and that they will be a witness to their persecutors. Now, is it possible that Jesus may choose not to remain in us? What? I think it is. It's something like the salvation that Christ has made available to the whole world by his death. But the large majority of people will never be saved because they're unwilling to repent of their sins and submit to him as their Lord. If we choose not to remain in him, I think he will then choose not to remain in us. Those are scary words that Jesus spoke to certain people. He said, "I don't know you. I never knew you." They indicate this awful possibility. So what happens to one who doesn't remain? First, Jesus doesn't remain in him. Second, he becomes trash, no longer a branch of the vine, but now a stick that's thrown away, withers, is picked up, and used as firewood. This is the same picture that we had of the salt that loses its saltiness in Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by people. Now, there's another conditional statement. It says this, "If you remain in me and my words remain in you." Remaining now becomes a matter of more than just being connected. It includes obedience to his words out of love for him. The one who remains and obeys is given a wonderful promise. Ask whatever you wish and it'll be given you. Is this a promise to use selfishly as third waivers use it to get anything they want from God? Well, that's impossible because it's given only to those who remain and obey. To use God to get what you want is the opposite of remaining and obeying. To be selfish goes against all that Jesus taught us in his words that we are to obey. What's God's purpose in giving us whatever we ask? Well, so it's that he might be glorified by our bearing much fruit, thus showing that we are true disciples. And what's a disciple? Well, according to Luke 14, a disciple is one who puts Jesus first before his loved ones and himself carries his cross, and gives up everything for Jesus. Jesus now talks about love, but he's still emphasizing the importance of remaining. There's a lot of talk about love in this world, but very little remaining in that love. All you got to do is look around, folks. The emphasis is on what we can get from that love relationship. But is that love? Definitely not. Love gives because the other is more precious than himself or herself. A good illustration is my great aunt and uncle. Were married for 58 years, back while they're still around. Was it easy for them to be together all those years? My great uncle had Parkinson's disease and needed to be helped to do the simplest things. And my great aunt patiently waited on him, although she had crippled feet and ankles, which made it hard for her to walk. It's the commitment of true love that kept them together all those years. Selfish love is not love. It's selfishness. So those who advocate getting something out of God by prayer or faith or word of faith don't love God at all. They love themselves. Here Jesus states the fundamental fact: as the Father loved me, so I have loved you. How does the Father love the Son? With complete and eternal commitment as an extension of himself. How does the Son love us? In exactly the same way. He commits himself to us, who are the extension or branch of him who is the vine. And how does the Son demonstrate his love and commitment to the Father and to us? Well, he died for us at the bidding and plan of his Father. How do we demonstrate our love for the Father and the Son? We are to obey God's commands and do his will till our death. The problem with even true love is that we can lose it. We can stray away from it. We can be attracted to another love of a person or a thing. It's very possible to not remain in love. That's why Jesus very seriously commanded, remain in my love. Then he gives the formula for remaining in his love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love. This sounds rather harsh and legalistic, but actually it's not. John 14:15 says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. The most complete and joyous obedience comes from a heart of love. True and deep love drives us to look for every opportunity to please the one loved. If he asks us to do something, we can't wait to do it just to please him. In case they didn't get the point, Jesus used himself as an illustration. Just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. If Jesus had chosen his own way in the wilderness temptation or in Gethsemane, he would not have remained in his Father's love. The relationship would have been broken and the entire world lost to the enemy. What will be lost if we don't remain in his love by obeying his commands? Heavy thought. You know what? I think we will. I believe those who intended for us to win or to help will be lost to us. How tragic that would be. It's interesting that in this section of 8 verses that Jesus used the word command 5 times. And yet the emphasis is on love and joy. The fact that we have a hard time putting command, love, and joy together just indicates our shallowness. The minute we feel that someone is giving us a command, we get stubborn and lose our love and joy in defiance of the one who gave it. Jesus is drawing us here to a higher plane. He's telling us that if we love him enough to obey him and we do his will out of love for him, something will happen. His joy will be in us and our joy will be complete. So our joy cannot be complete until His joy fills us because we are remaining in him and in his love by obeying his commands. One of Jesus' searching commands is here: love each other as I have loved you. That requires us to fit into the very big shoes of Jesus. How did he love them? Well, he laid down his life for them. John 10:11. And he loved them to the end. John 13:1. Now therefore the feast of before the feast of Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them till the end. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Love until the end. Can we do that? Well, I think that we can, but we need the Lord's help, obviously. There's no way we could do that on our own. Let's see, bringing up the gallery now and making it so you can unmute yourselves if you want to. If we have any questions, uh, Cheryl brought up